Alright, here we are. The day and age where we literally only can think of maybe two reasons to potentially redeem a Forma soul on something like this. You tell me, guys. Tell me what that is.
Let the lesson begin.
What's up, guys? Akariss here, bringing you another Fire Emblem Heroes video. Today's video is, as you no doubt can tell from the title and what's on screen right now, is our upcoming Fates Hall of Forms. I'm gonna really preface this whole video by saying that personally, I'm a bit disappointed by what we got as upcoming options, but it's not completely hopeless. I mean, plenty of you probably will want to redeem some of these for one reason or another, and I wouldn't blame you, whether that's for collectible reasons or because actually some of them could end up being pretty good later. We'll talk about that throughout the video, of course. But yeah, I was personally just hoping for something more that my account could use, but that's how it is for everyone, right? So I was hoping like a Brave Camilla, that would have been awesome, maybe some healer, maybe even some Rosander for the memes, you know, but that's all on my case, right? So I'm not going to say that this Hall of Forms is complete and utter doo-doo because everyone's situation is different, and I will do my due diligence here and provide you guys with the information you need to consider whether using one of your free, well, everyone should have got a free Forma Soul by now, is worth it on this pack of Hall of Forms units, or potentially save it, or, you know, maybe get another one later, and maybe for better units. Who knows? Everyone's case is different, but I'm going to show you guys what I think is the best use case of these characters through builds plus use cases of them, of course, and just talk about potential implications of a lot of these characters, or half of them rather, and what this all means. Okay, so one thing I want to mention before we jump into this video, the builds analysis and the Hall of Forms candidates, which of course includes Spring Kagero, Summer Camilla, Picnic, Felicia, and Flora, is I'm going to be showcasing builds in practical use cases, but when you're actually fishing for skills in Hall of Forms, try to pick up the rarest skills possible. For example, if I have a build showcasing reposition or swap, don't pick that up in Hall of Forms and actually pick up, let's say, something rare, like a rally up speed or something like that, or rally up attack, whatever. Just pick up a rare skill, and if you have the fodder in your barracks, then you probably should just pick up something you don't have in Hall of Forms. That's the way it goes. Keep in mind stuff like ARD skills, Disarm Trap, and dual skills are not available in Hall of Forms, and that's kind of sad because honestly, if they were, a lot of these like options would be a lot better. Maybe they change that in the future. One can only drink so much copium. Anyways, guys, so yeah, pick up rare skills. The builds I show are just for how you should use these characters and how have Hall of Forms help you make those skills to complete the full package. With that being said, let's start this out by smashing the like button, because if you haven't already, that's really easy to do and it's really F2P, so go do that. And sub if you haven't, because 37% of you are not. Alright. Yeah, let's jump into some of the builds here, guys. So we're going to start off by taking a look at probably the least interesting option, which would be Spring Kagero, at least when we're talking about meta game in Fire Emblem Heroes. Stat-wise, she actually isn't too bad. 34-35, 35-34 is not the worst for something so old, but it is definitely a bit old. The one advantage I can definitely see out of anyone who wants to invest in a Spring Kagero is that she has a fairly low HP stat, just like her base form, and therefore is a solid candidate for picking up Pumpkin in a Box plus Fury 4 and creating a recoil machine, aka get into 2 combat engagements, get under 50% HP, Wings of Mercy chains begin, and you go with that. Thankfully, she has enough of a offensive stat spread, and you combine that with Trace and Rain, and you will end up potentially sniping some things that aren't extremely bulky. Like, you're not going to break through Brave Hector here or something, but you could potentially get through some squishier front lines and set up a nice sweep in air offense using Spring Kagero as that. So actually, with no merges, this is a little bit of an advantage and something specific to just, you know, using a Forma Soul to create this type of unit if you haven't already. Consider, of course, though, that there are probably different options that will not really require, you know, you investing into, you know, a Forma Soul for this, but picking up like a full kit with Pumpkin in a Box and Fury 4 and the Rain and Trace and all that could actually be pretty good. So consider that as the only thing I could really think of in terms of air offense. An additional option is, of course, counterpicking using Courtly Fan and Wind Sweep, which is really great because you will run into those fire saves that can't break through. Be mindful that I have been seeing some Ascended Fjorms playing into air offense, which means that this whole counterpick Wind Sweep thing is a little bit less effective now because of obviously Ascended Fjorm has Null C in her weapon, so that's a bit unfortunate. And there are going to be better candidates, but likely this is about as good as it gets. So for you Spring Kagero fans, well, you either pick up the bunny because you like the bunny, or you want to try to find something use case here, and that is what it is. In terms of like high investment builds like tanking and stuff, you could potentially do that with near save, and that's something I'll show in the next one, which is with Summer Camilla. Now, stat-wise, again, pretty outdated, gonna be totally honest here. 33-36 is nothing to write home about nowadays. Unfortunately, no preference weapon and no real future. Let's be real with both Kagero and Camilla. You pick these up because you really like these characters and you really want to force use them into some kind of content in the game. And that is commendable in one way or another. If you're near max investment, you probably already invested highly into these characters, and Holoform's just an avenue to fill out your skill sets or potentially different options. Now, with the weapons here, you're likely going to be using something like Love Bouquet or Pack Blooms. Love Bouquet being an attack res joint drive, which isn't actually too bad, and Pack Blooms being off of the free Veronica, Valentine's Veronica, which had a like attack res debuff plus healing built in. Good for tanks. Spider Plush also, which came from, I believe, Halloween Sophia, isn't bad because it has guard as well. So these are just weapons considered, but nothing of them are really premium. Blue tomes aren't really that premium. You can get a lot of good ones either through the free Grail units or something like Spooky Sensor from codes, and it's just not that interesting. Realistically, you could combine Love Bouquet with some gold flyers, supporting some sort of flyer tank. But at the end of the day, like, there's gonna be better options for this, I'm gonna be totally honest, and that's just the way it is. So again, if you're trying to force these characters, then this is probably some way of doing it. Near save tank combined with that may work, but then you don't have IO shield, and you kind of want quick riposte because it gets through impact skills. They can't really run no follow-up without legendary violet. There's just too many restrictions to make this sort of stuff work. And honestly, if I'm missing something, I'm gonna open it up to you guys in the comments who really want to like prove to me that Summer Camilla and Spring Kagero have some sort of future that I might not be seeing. But realistically, you're going to be trying to force these units into some sort of comps, and that would be a downgrade over other options. But again, Holoforms would be a nice way to fill out that skill set. And there's not really that much time I'm going to be consuming in this video talking about those two. So Cam and Kagero, if you like them, pick them up. But again, outdated. Not, in my opinion, not really worth the Forma Soul unless you're a super fan. Let's talk into the actual more interesting stuff, beginning with Picnic Flora. Now, Picnic Flora is actually really interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, that weapon below me is not even bad by today's standards. I would actually consider it to be pretty nice. Picnic Flora is a type of character that really scales well with merges. If you have a lot of merges on Picnic Flora for whatever reason, she actually scales incredibly well with those merges because she likely will use every single stat, and to the point where I feel like speed stacking is the right move here. As somebody who's been using speed on basically every unit, including Ashnard, who has a speed IV for me at plus 10, plus 15, I can tell you that speed matters even on slow units to overcome a lot of different cases. One example of this, for example, is Cyros with an auto double and being pretty slow. So by stacking Ashnard's speed enough, he actually can get through the mirror impact and always win that speed check decisively. That's one thing to consider. So just again, a small example, but speed matters, and if you can stack it enough to somewhere like the 50s, which isn't unrealistic because this doesn't have any mythic blessings. So Light Season plus 3 Picnic Flora can actually reach about 50 speed if you combine Peonies, Flower, and Blessing, Gentle Dream, etc., as drive speeds. You could do all this fancy stuff and actually push speed enough to be high to compete with other speedy units. But the beauty of Picnic Flora is she uses all her stats, even when she's not necessarily checking res against a magical foe because of her weapon. And that's really impressive. So defense, res, speed, and attack are all good for her. And attack also has effective against beasts, which you might understand is actually aging pretty well, with relevant beasts still being pretty relevant in today's game. So one other thing I didn't mention here is that weapon is going to be due for refine and will likely be even better in time. So honestly, I would say that if you were thinking of merging Picnic Flora or already have her merge or something, then this is likely a pretty easy, solid pickup for you guys to invest into. For the rest of you, if you maybe have like even a single or two copies just lying around, you may still want to consider this Forma for the sake of that weapon being buffed up quite a bit. If it's already this good, it's only going to get better, and it does have a lot of anti-meta properties that I can appreciate. And therefore, we have some example builds here. Again, with the builds, pick up what you can and combine different skill effects. With armors, it's pretty simple. It's honestly just combine either neutralizing penalties to two-stick fighter, special fighter for special acceleration, guard effects through crafty fighter, or stance 3 skills. You effectively just want to combine all these skills into something for a build, and the unit is going to be pretty good. Additionally, Unity and Distant Defense 4, it doesn't really matter. You just want to combine different effects on armors who can use fighters and all this stuff, and you have something really good. That's how you do it. So of course, sample builds with a focus in mind, depending on what supports you do. Realistically though, I don't think Flora is a bad Forma, but she is definitely very specific and could end up being pretty good in the future, depending on what that refine ends up being. So highly, in terms of this Hall of Forms, this is definitely one of, in my opinion, the highly considered options to potentially use a Forma Soul for. However, you do take a bit of a risk since we don't know the refine, and of course if you don't have merges, she could fall behind a little bit because, as I said, she does appreciate every single merge and her stats really scale and show with that. So yeah. Next up, as you might have expected, is going to be Picnic Felicia. Now, Picnic Felicia is very, very unique, and in my opinion, probably aged way better than I thought she would have because speed is very relevant in this game. I actually stand by the idea that Amelia is, if not the best, near save tank right now, at least green axe near save tank, and potentially even Felicia definitely being either better or just as good. And the reason is because speed is super impactful as a near save tank, with many people trying to effectively win sweep check these things with stuff like Brave Alm, for example. Or just, you know, melee win sweeps in general. They are quite common, or more common than they used to, and therefore a near save tank that can compete with that speed is really good. Stuff like Gustav gets crushed by someone like Brave Alm, but someone like Amelia doesn't, and Felicia here doesn't as well. Another notable thing, of course, is like Erica. Brave Erica, believe it or not, can actually just be beaten by being outsped. If she doesn't have her special charged, a lot of the like ways that people envision it is just have her attack twice, her special can't be denied, the charge can't be denied, and therefore she fires off this crazy special. If her special isn't charged, then near save tanks like Felicia and Amelia are super strong, whereas stuff like Gustav and potentially Brave Edelgard might fall. Not always the case, but might. So yeah, speedy green near save tank, again, really good right now in the game, and therefore Felicia does deserve a solid mention. Notably as well is that she already has a very high speed stat, but it's even better when you consider that the weapon bumps that speed even further and then reduces speed based off of res, and she already has a high base res. One cool thing here is that Felicia does have a high base res, which makes her, I guess, kind of good against some sort of adaptive damage or dragons. That's less relevant, but mostly things that are going to attack into her that are melee aren't really going to have a high res, and she's always going to be getting some pretty good value out of that minus attack and minus speed, which, as I mentioned, lowering your enemy's attack by 8 and speed is pretty good. Whereas with Flora, it's defense being lowered. This one is speed, and since I just told you guys how important speed actually is now, Felicia's pretty good. Like, she's actually in a solid spot. So different ways to use her. Realistically, the only drawback of this weapon is that it doesn't have slaying, so kind of disappointing there. But Ruptured Sky is still an okay special. A little bit of anti-synergy with the weapon, of course, by lowering attack, but of course you could sub out for something like Glimmer or Moonbow, depending on how you want to go about it. But yeah, Ruptured Sky still does really well because it does end up hitting 40% against beasts, or dragons, which you do see quite a bit. So yeah, different ways to use her, of course. Sample builds there. I do think she's a great user of the new Darting Breath seal we just got. So right away, some use case usage there. Stacking speed and denying doubles is really big. Slick Fighter, neutralization, same old story with Armor's build to combine a bunch of effects. Unity, guards, neutralizations, special acceleration, close defense 4 for debuff, for buff neutralizing it. But you get the idea. At this point, armors are pretty like staple to build, combine effects, and unleash it upon the world. And that realistically covers my opinion here on these Fates Forma guys. As I said in the beginning, they're like half of these are not that interesting for meta reasons. The other two are really good, but do appreciate merges and high investment already, and could potentially end up being really good once the refines come in a little bit of time. But yeah, it's hit or miss for many people. It's a miss for me, but there's definitely some winners here for you guys that are Flora or Felicia fans for sure. With that being said, guys, let me know what you guys think of this Fates Forma. What are you expecting or hoping for in the upcoming 3 houses Formas next month, I guess, in the new year? That could be really interesting. Or around anniversary, we get the Heroes Formas as well. Hoping for Brave Veronica personally there. We'll see what happens. But either way, let me know what you think. Comments below. As always, smash that like button and sub. If you love me and the content I do, consider the Patreon below. As always, much love. Peace.
It's over.